Hello and welcome to Every Horror Movie on Netflix, the podcast where we watch, review, and discuss every horror movie on Netflix. I'm Steven. I'm here as always with my friends and co-hosts Chris.
Hi.
And Patrick.
Hello.
And we have a very special guest today who I cannot believe has not been on the show before, our good friend Andrew. Say hi, Andrew.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, you wanna tell us just a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Yeah, absolutely. I am a professional journalist with JTA, longtime friend of Patrick and fan of the show. And I am also a podcaster. I have a podcast called Radioactive, the Father Coughlin story, which is sort of horror-y, although it's really a historical horror tale. I would encourage people to check it out if they are at all interested in 1930s fascist radio. That is it's a deep dive into that particular area. And then I've also been a film critic for a number of years, most prominently for NPR.
Awesome. And I think we can definitely drop a note about your podcast about Father Coughlin in the show notes. I know at least a couple of our fans that would be interested in that just off the top of my head. So you've done some work as a film critic. Is horror a special genre to you? Is it something you tend to gravitate toward?
I would say, actually, I think Patrick, more than anyone, has helped me get into the various fineries of the horror genre, which had never really been something like, it wasn't something I grew up really immersed in, but over time I've been dipping my toes more into the horror waters, and also just being from the Detroit area, I do have a few connections to Sam Raimi, so I'm especially excited that we're delving into the Raimi verse here.
We should have got him on the show. What the hell? What are we doing with Andrew?
Okay, I'm gonna say, when I say connections to him, I don't mean I don't know him, but I did get to interview Bruce Campbell in college for my college paper, which was really cool. And I also went to school, elementary school, with the daughter of Ellen Sandweiss, who was in The Evil Dead, and has been, my understanding, a longtime friend of both Raimi and Campbell, and sort of a scream queen figure. So I would say, love the man, love what he's done for the Detroit horror scene, and that's why I'm really excited to be here.
Well, we're excited to have you, and as everyone's figured out now, well, by the time you queue up this episode, we're here today to talk about Sam Raimi's 2009 return to horror comedy fame, or whatever you want to call it, Drag Me to Hell. But before we get into it, we'd like to do a little catch-up. This one's going to be tricky, because I know Patrick and Andrew and I have a thing, and Patrick and Chris and I have a thing that I think we should probably talk about at least a little bit. So let's
talk about our things.
Let's talk about our things. We'll see how it goes. Chris, what have you been up to, buddy? Horror or otherwise? What you've been watching, reading, listening to, playing?
Well, I rewatched Black Swan.
Oh, that's right.
I watched Black Swan, 10 years ago or something, and then I just rewatched it, and I liked it the first time. I loved it the second time.
The second time is a date, right? The first time's a flirt. Is that your rule?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's I didn't say that. Someone else said that. But I subscribe to that, and especially in a movie like Black Swan, where I don't know, there's so much stuff going on a thematic level. It helps a lot in that movie to know where it's going to end up, to appreciate it on a scene-to-scene basis, even though if you've seen it before, they tell you where it's going to end up. At the beginning, the director comes out and he's like, we all know the story of the Black Swan, eh? She grows, she does this, blah, 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 she dies. It's all there. It's like, okay. But I had a great time with that. If you haven't seen that, watch it. Very, very good movie. That's all I've done really in the horror space. But as Steven alluded, the three of us and a couple of our other friends went and saw James Cameron's The Abyss at the largest movie screen in Michigan for the 4K one night only exhibition in advance of the 4K Blu-ray release that we've been waiting on for years and years. And it was Patrick's first time seeing James Cameron's The Abyss.
It was.
And I think you liked it.
I did, mostly. The part that I didn't like was the entire ending that James Cameron's originally intended ending. The only thing I disliked about it was James Cameron's pure artistic vision for the ending of his own film. But up to that point, I was having a great time. It's very claustrophobic, very atmospheric. Ed Harris is tremendous. And I like the little dash of alien, spooky, maybe angel horror energy as well. So yeah, I had a great time with it up to the last 20 minutes or so.
I really enjoyed myself too. I hadn't seen The Abyss since I was a kid. I remember just a few select images from it. And man, for the first couple, I mean, because the special edition is about just under 3 hours. The first 2 hours are so tense. This thing really moves, and like Patrick said, it's claustrophobic. It's just almost every shot. I was wondering, like, how was James Cameron able to achieve this? How was he able to get actors to go along with this? Like, not only is it a masterpiece of spectacle, but it was dangerous, very dangerous to make. So yeah, I feel honored to have seen it in this setting. However, yeah, the last 35-40 minutes of it were pretty cringy. Not only because of some of the upscaled special effects, but, Cameron is really just hitting you over the head with his environmental message and everything, which I admire. I agree with. I think he and I are, politically probably very similar, but it was just a little too much for me, a little too Disney or something.
Well, look, well, it's the opposite of what you'd get with Disney, because the thing I like about James Cameron and The Abyss is, yes, this stuff is cringe. Yes, he lays it on thick. Yes, it's like overly corny at some points. All of his movies are corny in spots, but it's because he's chasing, like, he's not afraid to go there and try to, like, just wear his heart on his sleeve and be sincere about something. And movies these days, blockbusters especially, are just so scared to extend a limb, because what if we're corny? What if we're cringe? Oh, we had that emotional scene. Well, we better undercut it with a one-liner to know that we're not taking it too seriously. And Cameron doesn't do that, and I like that.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment.
Oh, I'm very jealous. I have not seen The Abyss, but this sounds like the ideal setting in which to see it.
Well, come over in a few months when I have the 4K Blu-ray, and we'll watch it on the largest screen on my road.
I was going to ask if you had the largest movie screen in Michigan, like personally.
No.
Like if this was a home viewing.
Not quite.
Patrick, what have you been up to other than seeing The Abyss on the biggest screen in Michigan?
Not a lot of strictly horror, so I feel like it might be a good moment to kind of talk about our thing, my Andrew and Steven's thing, which is we all caught up to Todd Haynes' new flick, also on Netflix, so germane to the podcast, May December. Certainly not horror necessarily, but horror adjacent. It's definitely got some creepy and unsettling vibes.
I mean, it's right in the middle of May and December. October.
True.
There you go.
It's often scored like a horror film, even when Julianne Moore's just looking for hot dogs in the fridge.
Yes. I absolutely loved it. It's got Haynes' usual kind of balance of just absolutely masterful filmmaking, direction, acting, with that little a heap and helping of camp and soap to go along with it. And I found it a pretty damning statement on artists, our sort of perverted fascination with sordid crime stories. I really enjoyed it. What did you guys think?
Absolutely loved it. This is, I think, my favorite movie of the year, and I had been doing
nice.
some cramming over the last few weeks for the critics ballot that I'm in, and May December just kept flinging up to the top of the list. I think it uses the filmmaking techniques of horror. There's definitely some construction of horror in there, but there's also camp, there's soap opera, and it's all being done basically to really undercut the viewer and present this really horrific story, like the real life ripped from the headlines story of child abuse, and presented to us in a way that acknowledges that we're going to be fascinated by it because it's so lurid and it's so grotesque, and and we want to know every detail, just like Natalie Portman's character does in the movie, and that creates this really gripping but also like shocking kind of push pull that you have as a viewer, your relationship to the movie. It never stops.
Yeah, and in the end, like Haynes doesn't leave himself and his team out of sort of the incrimination of that interest in this subject matter, which I really appreciated. It's not just like, look at you, you're a freak for being interested in this, but yeah, me and my kind are too, essentially, was what I took from that ending.
Yeah, 100%. I adore this movie. I look forward to watching it again as soon as possible. I hear a lot of talk about the camp in it, and yeah, I did key into some of that, but for me, I found the movie to be overwhelmingly sad.
Oh yeah.
Overwhelmingly, even kind of depressing. There's just some interesting displays of humanity going on here that I don't know if I've ever seen presented through this specific lens. That said, though, without any spoilers, the horror adjacentness of it really got to me too. I mean, Julianne Moore's final line in this movie literally gave me like chills. I sat up in my seat in a way that I hadn't for any straight up horror movie I'd seen this entire year. Andrew, anything else you want to plug that you've watched or read or experienced recently?
I did just watch, not to be a total downer, but maybe my other favorite movie of the year was Jonathan Glazer's The Zone of Interest.
Dying to see it. Dying to see that
Yeah,
film.
I'll say this. As someone who has spent a good portion of my professional life writing about, thinking about Jewish issues, anti-Semitism, the Holocaust, and Holocaust memory, and considering that there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 450 Holocaust movies that have been made, like total, which is just like way too many. Nobody should ever feel like they have to watch all of those.
I have an idea for a podcast for you. Not to interrupt.
I'm sure not.
Our next spin-off. But I have to say, so out of that entire corpus, right, of like, again, lurid fascination with the subject matter, this is the first time that I have seen that got Nazis right, that like correctly sort of diagnosed the psychology of that era and the psychology of like the oppressor, for lack of a better term, and the banality of it, the benignness by which this movie portrays these truly evil people just going about their lives utterly unmoved and not caring at all about the fates of an entire race of people that they are burning alive across the street, was so moving and in a way weirdly validating for me anyway, to see this, to see that this sort of bold modern reinterpretation of like a story that we've all read about in history class, finally had something worth saying about this time period, and especially aided by Micah Levy's fantastic score. I can't wait for you guys to hear it. It is terrifying. It really, like, out of all the things in that movie, the musical score is probably what got under my skin the most. So that's been on my mind a lot, The Zone of Interest. I'm excited for more people to see it and debate it.
Sounds like a cheerful time. Maybe we can see it on the biggest screen in Michigan, boys. No, I'm dying. Jonathan Glazer, I mean, he makes a movie once every like 15 years, and it just blows the state of cinema out of the water. I have a couple of really quick things. I've still been watching Nathan Fielder, Benny Safdie, and Emma Stone's series The Curse. I believe it is halfway through now. It is so hard to talk about, so I will just say it continues to be a living fucking nightmare. It has not fully transpired into horror, at least of the corporeal kind, but it is very psychologically taxing and horrifying. And then a quick plug for my book club over on the Amon Discord. Just last night, as we're recording this, I met up with a couple of lovely folks to talk about Chuck Tingle's book Camp Damascus. It was a really fun illuminating discussion. That guy's really going places as if he hadn't been already. And next, we are going to probably be reading a short story collection, something we haven't done before, but I'll make an announcement in the Stevens Book Club Discord thread soon here. So that brings us, at long last, to the topic at hand, Sam Raimi's Drag Me to Hell. This is a movie about a young woman, a loan officer. She's trying to get a promotion at her job, trying to be ruthless even though it's not her nature, and she denies an older, very, very creepy looking woman a third extension on her home loan, hoping that she can impress her boss, and she gets cursed. She may or may not get dragged to hell. Who knows? That's what they decided to call the movie, so you decide. What is everyone's relationship with this film? Did we all see this previously? Maybe even back when it first came out? I know I did, because Sam Raimi was my hero in 2009.
Oh, I saw it in the theater for sure. Seen it, I think, another time or two since then, actually.
I saw it on DVD when I had the Hollywood Video Unlimited Pass, probably shortly after it was available on DVD. Watched it once and haven't really thought much about it since. And I just watched it again for the second time.
Are you subtly tipping your hand there, Chris?
I might be. We'll see if it hit me a stronger way this time.
I saw this film on DVD probably shortly after it came out on DVD, and really liked it. This was also only my second time seeing it, but I think it stuck with me a bit more maybe than it stuck with Chris. Certainly the ending, which we'll talk about, but that's been burned into my brain forever.
So 2009. I'm like, where was I at in my headspace? Had Spider-Man 3 come out by that point?
Yes.
Is this post-Spider? Yeah, so Sam Raimi, of course, had made, the Evil Dead movies, Army of Darkness, and then kind of quickly started to become sort of a prestige filmmaker, mostly thrillers. I mean, he did A Simple Plan, The Quick and the Dead, which I actually still haven't seen, Darkman, a great film, but then he got kind of sucked into making these big budget superhero movies, the first two of which are amazing and I think still hold up very well. But I was, he would drop little references to his kind of low budget upbringing into those films, and I just kind of wanted him to pull back a bit, and instead of having Bruce Campbell in your movie for 2 seconds, like, make a movie that would make sense for him to actually play a fully realized character in. And so, sure enough, the news was announced that he was going to kind of go back to his roots, make a lower budget film that was a straight up horror comedy, and I could not have been more pleased with the results at the time. This thing, it moves, it's gross, it's got that kind of quick editing and really smart shot construction that he's known for even in the Spider-Man movies, but that in this, to me, he called back, closer to Evil Dead. It's a smaller scale. What are y'all's initial impressions of revisiting this thing?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly was sort of shocking at the time because, as you said, he became a blockbuster filmmaker. The Spider-Man, that whole trilogy, I still rules. I will defend even fucking Spider-Man 3 all day long, but that's a separate discussion. And it was surprising at the time to see him go back to this, and it's almost more surprising looking back at it now because he hasn't really gone here again. Like,
no.
He just descended even further into like Tim Burton, just boring ass blockbuster shit. The closest he's gotten to doing something cool along those lines again is the Doctor Strange movie that came out a year or two ago, which is plenty of fun in places, but Marvel kind of does its usual thing and waters down his vision.
It's interesting because like in the 15 years since Drag Me to Hell, like what has his output been? He did like that Wizard of Oz remake, which I didn't bother to see, even though it was all filmed here.
I was obligated to see it, and it was not good.
Oh, no. And he did, like, the Evil Dead TV show, right? And then Doctor Strange, and isn't that kind of it?
He's made enough films. What more do you want from the guy?
He's
He's done it all.
He's done
what
it
else
all.
does he need to do? He did a Marvel movie. Now he can say he's done it all. I never really. I'm not the Evil Dead stuff is not really my cup of tea. And I don't know, sort of like Lady Gaga. I think Sam Raimi's at his best when his impulses are being tempered by more commercial demands.
Oh,
and
interesting.
So, like, I watched The Evil Dead, and I'm like, all right, like, it's cute, and certainly, again, like, you know, we talked last episode about the Mount Rushmore independent film and stuff. I don't know if Sam Raimi's on it, but certainly going out into the woods of, you know, I think it was Tennessee, with his Michigan friends and making that movie with like a gallon of corn syrup and a camera is pretty cool. But I just don't need to see people. I just don't need to see that much fluid in a movie. The crazy putting the camera on the skateboard doesn't do a whole lot for me. I mean, I get it. It's fun. It's fine. But you're going to have to bring more than that to the table to really get me excited about your movie. Drag me to hell this time. I'm going to say I was bored a lot because there's some great gags, but it's a lot of the fluid. It's a lot of the screaming. It's a lot of the, you know, person walking around the house in the dark and so many words. I need a little more.
I don't have a problem with fluids. I'll say that. I don't have a problem with the fluids. Give me the fluids.
Yeah, I was bored when there weren't fluids. Like the earlier parts of this movie where it's just a lot of like wind blowing around. I was like, okay, come on, let's get to the like bile coming out of the corpse.
Mm-hmm. I'm amazed to hear that anybody could be bored for a second of this. I feel like this movie moves so fast and hard.
I agree.
But with the Evil Dead movies, I mean, I have a complicated relationship with them. I want to chime in on this because they were super important to me right around 6th, 7th grade. I wanted to be a filmmaker, and they're definitely kind of film bro movies. You know, they're made for almost no money by some local fellas. But I love the boy that I was that loved those movies more than I love those movies now as an adult, if that makes sense. Like, I don't see myself even really watching Evil Dead 2 possibly ever again. It did what it needed to do for me at that age, and I have a fondness for how it affected me, but yeah, it's not my thing anymore.
That's kind of how I feel about his Spider-Man movies. Like, I still like them. But I loved them when they came out, and I watched them like when I was in college or something, like still young but a little bit older, and like it wasn't the same. And I know that when I go back to them, it's just gonna be even less the same. And so I kind of have nostalgia for like that part of my adolescence and really connecting to all the angst in those movies. More so than I like the movies themselves at this point, probably.
I still rewatch those movies all the time. I just rewatched the first one like a month ago from your box set, Chris, your blue box set of the trilogy that I bought from you for $10 or something like that.
Hell of a deal. I didn't know what I had.
It's funny to hear that. I feel like, I'm someone who believes that Sam Raimi is basically the grandfather of like the modern superhero movie by virtue of the Spider-Man trilogy, right? That sort of kooky kinetic sensibility that he brought to it, where after he kind of left the game, it just leaned really hard into that, and like gradually over the next 20 years bled out the more individuated sense of personality that he brought to this material, until all that was left, I think, was that broad sense of nostalgia for just whatever kind of kid you were when you first learned about Thor or the Guardians of the Galaxy or something like that, right? And so it's interesting looking at like where it's how you situate this film in his chronology, because as we said, this was like back to basics for him, right? He had decided he was like tired of the triple digit budget films, the Spider-Mans, and he wanted to do something that was more raw, that was more like specific to him. And everybody else just went in the complete other direction and said, no, I'll take the giant budget, I'll take the green screen, I'll take everything that you left behind, and we're just gonna make product now. And so it's sort of bittersweet when I look at like his trajectory and what he brought to the genre and what it moved on to without him.
I still really on this viewing, I still really enjoyed so many sequences in this movie that like were Simultaneously refreshing and kind of like maybe a little bit depressed because again he's not returned to this kind of filmmaking. But a major highlight is early on in the film, after Alison Lohman's character is cursed by this Romani woman after denying her the extension of her home loan. She meets this woman in a parking garage, and this is just like one of the most deliriously balls out two-person action sequences I've maybe ever seen in a movie, as these two are tussling in the car. Alice Lohman is crashing into other cars. There's staples to the head and to the eyeball. There's teeth being knocked out on a dashboard. It's just so it's like a Looney Tune.
There's a close-up of a staple flying back out of an eyeball as the car is about to crash from the momentum.
It's not to say that he didn't have that attention to detail and to even gory detail in the Spider-Man movies. I mean, I think of the scene where Doc Ock kills all the like medical staff in Spider-Man 2. Is it like has a little bit of this energy? But man, like it was so fun. I hadn't seen this movie in years. It was so fun to see him. Like I could just see him laughing behind the camera and having just a blast. And it's that classic Sam Raimi energy where like it's a lot of quick, tight, very well-constructed shots edited together seamlessly to make you feel like this movie is punching you in the nose at times.
Yeah.
And I just delighted in it.
This is also Alison Lohman's final movie role before her retirement.
Oh, yeah.
She retired?
Yeah. She's just raising her kids now.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's good for her.
Wonder what about this movie would have turned her off to acting.
I think she wanted to go out on top.
There we go.
So let me get a little let me press you here, because on our last episode we reviewed Kevin Smith's Tusk, and a movie I thought was very funny. A movie you two guys, Patrick and Steven, Andrew wasn't here. I don't know what he thinks about Tusk, but the horses left the barn on that. You guys were very put off by what you described as, Kevin Smith's bro humor, where everything feels like a joke that he's telling, etc. And I feel like there's a double standard here. I feel like we're coming into these movies with preconceptions about the directors, and we're giving one guy benefit of the doubt, and we're not giving the other guy benefit of the doubt. Because I don't, when there's a woman where Stephen called her a Romani woman, she is a stereotype of
absolutely.
A certain type of Eastern Europe. It doesn't even feel appropriate to say Romani because she does not reflect an ethnic group.
And I think she speaks in Hungarian, but I'm like, I don't know what to call her because she's clearly meant to be a stereotype.
She's meant to
but
be
it's also
the
not
word
okay.
we don't say anymore. She's the word we don't say anymore, but she is like the most foul stereotype you could ever imagine of this type of person. And she's like got a glass eye and her teeth are coming out, and she's like drooling all over the desk of a bank where she's begging for a loan. And this is all played for comedy. And I don't understand why that's less like obnoxious or bro-y than, the joke about the Kill Bill kid killing himself in Tusk. Defend your takes.
I mean, so that is an aspect of this that I kind of had to grapple with this time through, and I really don't even know how to talk about it. And I'm not saying I thought that anything about this character was like hilarious. The action is amazing, but I think it's a little bit lazy. Yeah, to have I'll just say the word, because in 2009, I'm sure the press materials called her a gypsy.
I mean, that's what it said. They say that in the movie numerous times.
And she's no less complicated than that. But also, this is clearly just such a comical sketch of a horror movie that I feel like it's able to get away with it and go for the gross out factor, which I'm sure works like gangbusters on teenagers, or did at the time.
What's also funny about the stereotype conversation is that you also have in this movie an Eastern mystic of Indian descent who meets with a Latina spiritual Santeria person, and they somehow both know how to deal with a Hungarian witch's curse.
Yeah.
So there's like this, it's like there's like, if you want to be generous, you could call it like a multiculturalist theory of dark magic. But there are other words that might apply too.
Yeah, my take was that I think Sam Raimi was having fun with superstition and religion in a way that, like, I don't think you could get away with in a mainstream movie today, and I'm not saying it's all okay in 2009 either. And we should note that one of those characters' names is Ram Dass, by the way. I don't know if anybody groaned harder than I did hearing that this time around. I don't know, Chris. Do you feel takes have been defended? I don't know if I have a defense here.
Hey, that's good enough. I don't need to convict.
Well, I think those are
anybody
kind of
today.
two separate conversations, though, because I mean, we weren't really criticizing Tusk on the basis of cultural portrayals, which this movie certainly does not pass the smell test on. I don't think anybody here is going to say, yeah, this is a great depiction of Romani people or Southern Asian people or anything. Sure, we can call that out. I'm not sure what you're asking to be defended here.
I just thought that if Kevin Smith made this movie, you would easily say that this is douchey bro humor in some of the way that these scenes play out and some of these characters.
Well, it depends on the craft, and I didn't find there to be a lot of craft to Tusk. And Tusk
Exactly.
but also, and again, obviously matter of opinion, different strokes. I found Tusk boring as shit, but you found this boring as shit. So I mean, whatever,
not
just
boring as shit.
different
Not boring
tastes,
as
I
shit.
guess.
Well, I wanted to say quickly though. I think this comes down to it's interesting, and I wish I had like more sort of eloquent answers for your line of questioning, Chris. But I want to say it comes down to sensibilities, but I also don't want to say that my sensibility is the way that certain stereotypes are played with in this film, and even further exaggerated. But it was to me, this movie moved much more elegantly than Tusk.
Well, and also, I think you have a lead character who's actually compelling. Like, I never gave a shit about what was going on with don't know what the fuck his name was at this point in Tusk. Justin
Wallace.
Long. Justin Long basically plays Wallace in this movie too, as he plays Justin Long in every single thing he's in. But I mean, there's actually like a compelling kind of push-pull in the the ostensible one bad decision that this character makes. You know, the Raimi said they wanted to tell a story about a character who is otherwise moral but makes a, in their words, sinful decision, and the consequences of that. And that's a compelling story, even within, kind of the silliness and outrageousness of everything that's going on here. It's still a character I can hang my hat on, as opposed to Tusk, where it's just like this douchebag podcaster who you hate from square one and hate through the whole movie. And, what do you do with that? But we don't need to relitigate Tusk so soon.
No.
I was gonna say, wasn't Tusk just didn't it start as like a joke on his podcast?
Oh yeah.
So there was not a lot of like underlying thought to that movie. Whereas here, and this is not really, like, you can't really credit Raimi for this. This is more the circumstances in which it came out. But 2009, it's the aftermath of the subprime mortgage crisis, and this movie is so adept at picking up on those themes and running with it, where the whole thing pivots around like a bank denying a loan to a low income person, and then having her house repossessed, and and it sort of asks a lot of thorny moral questions in its way, in its ridiculous, over the top B movie way, about what does it mean to be a good person when you are working for this larger financial capitalist system that exploits and takes advantage of people, and all you're doing is just trying to get ahead. I mean, this is sort of like a classic, like, what would you do in this situation kind of horror movie.
It's a morality play.
I mean, it's a morality. Yeah, exactly. And like, if I was in Alison Lohman's shoes, I probably would have made the same initial decision as her. And then I don't know how I would have gotten out of this like 3-day curse timeline. I would have been terrified of, like, there would have just been, no way out for me. So I could, relate to her dilemma more. Certainly, I think the structure of the story opens itself up to, like, you get more and more inside her head, her sense of panic and paranoia as the deadline is ticking down, which also makes this a really interesting, gripping narrative. And you have some of that over the top viscosity, which I guess you have to either get on board with or not.
Viscosity.
Yeah, so I didn't really connect to her all that much. I I mean, I think she's likable, relatable, sure. But that often comes across like in a very, like, this felt like a Disney movie to me, because like they would show you something with subtext, like her looking at the empty bank manager desk, and then they'd tell you, like, by the way, that promotion's coming up. You'll still want that, right? You know, they do things like that to kind of really drill her motivations home. And then here's the thing, like, they set her up. They show this sin. They show the industry she works in. She denies this loan. She basically evicts this old, frail woman. And we're supposed to sympathize with her, and I think we do, but only to a point, because the selling point of this movie and the entertainment is the titillation of her eating maggots and, like, you know, fighting, you know, having horrible cursed things happen to her. And there's really not a lot of interiority to her character for most of the movie. For example, spoiler alert, she kills her pet cat, and it's a punchline, and it's not really revisited, and she doesn't really she doesn't really, you know, there's not a lot of interior conflict.
It's revisited.
Sure, it's revisited, but again, it's a punchline. Like, she's not really she's a cartoon character for most of this movie. At the end, we do get a little more of her, like, internal quarrels and stuff, but this movie's about her eating mud, sucking shit, tasting maggot, getting all sorts of things put in her nose and mouth, you know, and so to say, this is such a great character, I disagree.
Nobody said it's a great character. It's just a compelling character, and when I'm comparing to Wallace the fucking Walrus in Tusk, which is, to my mind, the bottom of the fucking character barrel, yeah, sure, this is a great character. In any other context, I don't think I'd describe it as a great character, but it was there's at least a hook there. I understood who this was. There was some kind of conflict for the character that I related to and that drew me into the story. I think that was a jumping off point for this.
This movie is a cartoon, and either you're on its wavelength and you can enjoy it, or you can't, and I'm not going to blame you either way. I do want to issue a correction. Maybe this will help sort of like deflate the tension here. I think, Andrew, you said this was the last movie she made before she retired, Alison Lohman.
I thought so. Am I wrong about that?
So she actually, that was 2009, 2015. She returns to Hollywood.
Oh, yes!
To play psych patient in the Vatican Tapes.
The Vatican Tapes.
A great film.
She's married to Mark Neveldine. Director of the great film Crank High Voltage.
Right, I think she returned to have a few bit parts, like specifically in her husband's movies, right?
Yeah, which was just hilarious to me looking at her list right now, because that movie looms large over the show. Chris owns it on Blu-ray.
I do.
Ain't no animal. He wasn't going to buy that.
You come over and watch that one too. We'll watch The Abyss, and then we'll watch the Vatican Tapes.
I appreciate her in this movie because I think I had read that, like, she was absolutely not a fan of horror movies when she, like, accepted this role. And so, first of all, it's like brave of her to take on this like the most horror-y of horror movies, and to do some of the themes, you know, some of the scenes that she's like asked to do here are just absolutely disgusting. And she just kind of throws herself into it with gusto. And I think the fact that she is probably, like, very privately repulsed by the whole thing kind of shows up in her performance.
Oh yeah,
and you know, and that's also part of it. I feel like a good Sam Raimi movie has a protagonist who is just kind of like really disgusted by the stuff coming out of their bodies or being thrown at their bodies.
It's a great physical comedy performance, I think. She's like, oh man, I wish she had really done more since this movie, because I don't even know what else I know her from. Oh, I guess she was in Big Fish. I was a Tim Burton fan at one point. All right, so here's your movie. The rest of the movie, she's trying to get rid of this curse. A lot of gross things happen. Lots of twists and turns. Lots of interesting attempts to use different forms of spirituality to deal with this woman and the curse she's inflicted on Alison Lohman. Justin Long is trying to be along for the ride, trying to be a sweet boyfriend, but he's also got asshole parents, and there's a big dinner coming up. I don't know if there's anything else we need to talk about before we get to the spoiler room, is what I'm saying here, you guys. I think we should review it while tensions are high, because it'll be a little more interesting, maybe.
Yeah, it's not that plotty. It's not. She gets cursed. The woman, the old woman, dies early.
Yes.
On. So there's no there's no avenue to having her lift the curse or anything like that. She's basically just cursed. She has to deal with it, and it's all icky sticky.
We should say that like the tension of the movie is around the rules of the curse and how and whether she would be able to break them. So the rule is like, because the old woman has taken a bit of her clothing and, curses her, then from that point on, the clock is ticking and she has 3 days to, as I understand it, like transfer ownership of this like button from her coat that has been cursed. Or she can sacrifice a goat. And if she fails to do either of those things, she will be dragged to hell. Like that, they tell you that in the early part of the movie.
The opening scene, yes, we do see a young boy get dragged to hell for stealing a piece of clothing from a Romani woman. I don't know how they refer to her, but it's kind of the same sort of stereotypical shit that we don't talk about anymore, in that insensitive way. But that's kind of an awesome opening too, though. I mean, for your movie to be called "Drag Me to Hell" and to begin with, child of all things, being dragged to hell,
and it's like 3 minutes, like that intro. It just boom, boom, boom. It just roars.
Well, and it gives me one of my favorite like horror movie tropes of all time, which is the smash cut to an opening title with a good like screechy musical cue. It's very Insidious. It's very
James Wan.
Yeah, very James Wan. I had a big smile on my face for that.
Would you view it, cue it, or screw it, Steven?
I give this my highest view it. I think this movie's a fucking banger. Like, I had so much fun just watching this by myself. I hadn't seen it in, I don't know, at least 5 years. Yeah, it's stupid. Yes, it's cartoony. Yes, certain elements of it probably didn't even hold up well to, social scrutiny at the time. But I had a smile on my face the whole time. It's got big Halloween energy. Even when, like, the jokes don't land, usually the jokes involving viscosity is interesting. I still admired that like a movie like this came out alongside what I have to assume are like a bunch of dumb teen horror movies at the time. And here's a movie that's made by someone who's something of a master of putting these things together and reviving a vision of horror comedy that had rarely been seen before, and I don't think has really been done this well since. I just love this movie. I'm glad I have the Scream Factory Blu-ray right now. I'm going to watch it every year without fail. So view it. Patrick.
Oh, big view it for me too. It's great entertainment, exceedingly well made. I think, Chris mentioned directors and how you may have prejudice against various directors. And I don't think I really bring that to this. Andrew and I just saw a movie by Eli Roth, who I fucking hate otherwise, and it was a banger. I'm always open to different directors' takes, but the point I'm getting to is, I think Sam Raimi absolutely elevates this. I think Eli Roth, or for that matter, Kevin Smith, could make this movie, and I don't think it would just rock the way it does. It just clips along. It has that kinetic energy to it that is just impossible for me to resist, and it's got a lot of gross out stuff, but it does it so well and in such an over the top way that even if that's not your thing, which it is mine when it's done well, I think you still have to just respect the craft here. I had a great time with it. Chris.
I'm going to give it a cue it. I think a low cue it. I didn't love this movie. It has some great moments. It's got some really good gags, but I would say there's a good gag every 10 or 15 minutes or so. Like a really good, like, oh, that was a cool effect. Oh, that was a cool stunt, etc. The rest of it, there's a lot of stuff we haven't talked about where it's just like, oh, CGI shadow on the wall. Oh, CGI fly buzzing around. Oh, it's the wind. Oh, we're walking through a house. Interminable stuff and gags that just aren't that good. Overuse of CGI on some of these gags and gross out moments. I'll
agree with you there.
I'm not grossed out when like someone's getting mud spat in their face and it's like you can see the hard edges of the After Effects thing on their face. just not consistent enough with the gross out stuff, which wouldn't be a problem, except this movie's such a one-trick pony. That's what you're here for. You're here for the weird, crazy, gross, silly boogeyman stuff, and it's batting like 30% at best. You can't really get into the characters. The plot is so thin, and it moves... It's scene to scene. The plot does not progress. She's just cursed in every scene, and not a lot is changing. Oh, now she goes to the boyfriend's house. Do we really care what happens at the boyfriend's house? It doesn't really matter. She's still cursed, and on and on and on. At the end, it finally gets interesting for me, post seance scene, and then that's the end of the movie. So what are you left with? It's fun. I'm not going to knock anybody for liking it. Wasn't my cup of tea. So watch it or don't. The choice, as always, is yours. Andrew.
Wow. Well, when I was watching this movie at home, my wife was sitting next to me, not watching it, watching something on her phone. She happens to look up during the funeral scene, which is a scene in which somehow the corpse of this old lady winds up falling on top of Alison Lohman, and there's just all this green putrid bile coming out of her mouth, spilling onto this poor
embalming
woman.
Fluid. I was like, what is that?
Right? I don't know what. Like, I'm not a mortician. I don't know. But she looks up at it and she's like, why would anybody want to watch this? And then she looks over at me and I am cackling. I beside myself. What I'm saying is view it.
Hell yeah. All right. You want to come back on the show in 2 weeks, Andrew?
That's the best review anyone. I mean, like, divorcing it from my my own prejudices on the film. That's just a great way to review the film. So go view it to your review, even if it was a screw it.
Patrick or Chris, you're both better at doing the spiel before we go down to the spoiler room. Which of you would like to take a turn this time?
Hey, you like our show? You should follow it on social media. We're at AmonCast, EHMON Cast on Facebook, Instagram, and the one site that used to be called Twitter and now is called Some Letter.
You don't even have to. That site's gonna be dead by the time this episode comes out.
Are we paying money for that?
Fuck
like,
no.
Is there a domain fee or something? I hope
no.
not.
No, we should probably just shut our
fucking
fucking account
haunted house.
down
That
there.
website.
Yeah. But yeah, anyways, follow us on Facebook or Instagram at least. Also go to your...
Speaking of dead sites, you can go to every horror movie on Netflix.com.
My
Maybe
audio
I'll have
cut
it
out for a
fixed.
sec. I didn't realize you guys were talking about Twitter first. Sorry.
Yeah,
But yeah. Well, that's a haunted place too.
Oh, you thought I was talking about our website?
Yeah.
I'm glad we doubled down on that joke unintentionally.
Me too.
But yeah, our website is pretty fucking broken. It's not broken enough, though, that you can't click on the merch store link and go buy one of our t-shirts, from which we get a whopping sum of like $1.50 a piece or something. But it's worth it to us to get Amon art out there in the world, get that Amon name out there on people's bodies so that everyone can see you as a walking billboard for our podcast.
Of course, you guys gave this movie a view. The artwork on our shirt there is someone sitting in the chair and they're having blood spewed all over
Just
them.
viscera right in the mouth.
Yeah, viscosity. That's a viscous t-shirt right there. And lastly, go to your podcast provider of choice. Leave us a review, subscribe, tell your friends, share it around. We love to see those reviews in particular because we like to see your feedback, and it helps people find the show when we have more reviews and an excellent 4.5 star rating. That's what we're gunning for now, 4.5.
No, 5, baby. We want 5. We're not
Well,
selling
it's
for any less than
it's
that.
incremental progress, Stephen. We've been at 4.4 for 2 years now, so I'll take 4.5 if we can get it.
Fair enough. All right. Well, all that said, we're going to go down to the spoiler grave. We're going to dig down deep during the storm of the century and spoil everything about Drag Me to Hell. All right, Welcome back to the show. We are down here in the spoiler grave. It's raining. There's a corpse coming up over our shoulder. It's hard to get out of here.
There's a fucking mudslide coming over the edges of this grave. That was one of my favorite details of that scene. Sorry.
That was awesome. Let's do those drive-in totals, though. We've got one dead cat. We've got one talking goat. We got eyeballs in the mouth. We've got embalming fluid in the mouth. We've got it stapled to the forehead, stapled to the eye, stapled back out of the eye. This movie is not deep, you guys. So Andrew very astutely mentioned earlier that this came out right around the time that the sort of subprime housing loan collapse was happening. Lots of stuff going on in the economy. This movie was actually written 10 years before that, though. I think maybe these themes of predatory lending and banks being evil are just universal. But that's just our into a story that doesn't have a lot going on deep beneath the surface, except a kind of fun little examination of morality. I did have a lot of fun during this movie, wondering, whether Alison Lohman's character really deserved what she got in the end, and I don't have a clear answer for that.
No,
but mostly this is just a series of gags as her curse gets increasingly difficult to lift, and I enjoyed that. I didn't expect anything more out of it. That was just enough fun for me.
But to get to the specifics of the spoilers, we conducted this seance. Talking goat, amazing. Terrible CGI, but that was part of the charm for me. The goat looks ridiculous, and it's amazing. You see it for like 2 whole seconds, and that's it.
What does it say? You tricked me.
It calls her a bitch.
Yeah.
The talking goat is the part that I remember most vividly from having seen this as a kid, other than the ending, because I thought that was hilarious when I was a kid. For me as a kid, there was nothing better than seeing a goat come to life and start swearing at you and calling you a bitch. That was hilarious. That was very, very South Park.
I oddly had forgotten completely about the goat, which is weird because obviously there are some shocking visuals in this movie, and 2 or 3 of them were pretty well burned into my brain, but that one didn't for some reason.
It's a good example of Sam Raimi's humor that not only does the goat become possessed, but the possession becomes something that's like tossed between all the different characters in that scene. That it's just like it is a Looney Tunes gag. It just like establishes the property of demonic possession, and then just has it go willy nilly all around the room,
including like the seance leader's son, who we've never seen before. Who I kept thinking like, it was Justin Long not able to make it this day, because it seems like a natural role for him to be there. And when he gets possessed and he's calling out our hero for being the pork queen or whatever, it seemed like something that would make more sense coming from the boyfriend than this character we've never seen before.
Would have liked Justin Long to get possessed by a demon in that particular scene.
And maybe even turned into a walrus.
I had this weird memory that character was played by one of Sam Raimi's brothers when I first saw this. I don't know why, but I mean he might as well be. He's up on doing this goofy little jig, like clearly hanging from wires. They barely even tried to disguise this. It's just totally bonkers, totally Looney Tunes. What do you expect from Sam Raimi taking a little vacation from big budget filmmaking?
Yeah,
it's fun enough for me. Chris, during the break, you mentioned that there were a couple of gags in this movie that you responded well to. I'm curious what those might be.
My favorite gag was she gets a bloody nose in the bank office. And it's like things have already gone horribly wrong for her, and she's looking down. You get the classic drips of blood on the paper, and we're like, oh well, this is bad enough. And her boss is over there asking an important question at the same time, and she's getting a phone call at the same time. But then when she looks up from the table, the blood explodes out of her nose like Kill Bill and drenches the bank manager. And that was great. And then the bank manager has
Oh my God, his
preoccupation. He's like, did they get in my mouth? Did they get in my mouth?
He also says this, I don't know why this made me laugh so hard, but he says, "What's with you?" Like as if she's doing this intentionally, you know? Or like, are you trying to fuck up your chance of getting this job? I found all that stuff, like about her getting this promotion, to be so kind of cartoonish and funny too. She's up against a coworker who was hired like a month prior and is really just sucking ass trying to become the assistant manager. He winds up stealing a file of a loan that she's working on, a very, you know, big budget, high number loan, and selling it off to another bank. She does wind up actually seemingly getting rid of the curse, and everything seems to be going well for her. She gets news that she's getting the promotion, right?
Well, yeah, eventually. But so I mean, the seance occurs and it's a disaster. And so then she's like, well, what do I do now? And then the South Asian mystic man who listens to nothing but sitar music in his office comes up to her and says, hey, there's something I didn't tell you about before because it's too fucked up. But if you take the cursed object that you've had in your pocket this whole time and you gift it to somebody, they'll get the curse and they'll be dragged to hell tomorrow and not you. Yeah. But otherwise, you're going to get dragged to hell tomorrow. So you got to figure this out tonight. And then this is my favorite part of the movie. Now we actually have like a moral dilemma for our character who's until this point done nothing but respond to viscosity being thrown at her. And she's like in a Denny's and she's like trying to figure out who deserves this curse.
That is a Chris Slat scene right there. Like I could read, I can just imagine your screenplay for this scene in particular.
And I really liked, the waitress she interacts with, who's mad that she's only getting coffee because she needs tips, and she's like, "If you don't leave me alone, I'm going to give you a tip you won't forget."
Isn't that the part where her southern accent comes back out?
Oh, does it? Oh, maybe.
Yeah, because at the beginning, she's listening to tapes to try to, purge her accent.
Oh, right. That's what that was. Okay.
And then in the diner scene, she's getting really upset with the waitress, and the mask slips, and she just like goes back to like this like pork queen drawl that it's like remnant of her past.
Yeah, that's even more impressive than what Julianne Moore did with that lisp in May to Century.
That lisp was so creepy.
Yeah. I know.
Oh my God, we didn't even talk about that.
Oh, God.
And then, like, you know, she sees like a very old, frail man who's on oxygen sitting at the table, and it seems to be like imply like, oh, she's gonna give it to him because he's old, he's gonna die anyway. Forgetting that the curse isn't that you're gonna die tomorrow; it's you're gonna get dragged to hell and your soul ravished for all of eternity. So it doesn't matter if you're young or old or sick or healthy.
It's big circle energy.
Yes, it is big circle energy. She's like weighing the pros and cons of all these people. And then she does what, you know, we would expect her to do. And she calls, this is like the best part of the movie. She calls in her rival from the bank who fucked her over on this loan. And she's about to give him this thing. And then she's like, you know what? Like, this is too fucked up even to give you. And I really like that. And that's why I knee jerk said, no, she doesn't deserve to go to hell, because I think the movie itself even says it doesn't matter how horrible you are. This is something that nobody deserves. Personally, maybe I would say this person should go to hell, but
it's an impossible situation. And like, to me, that's where the fun lies in this. It's like whoever gets the curse really doesn't deserve it.
Yeah, there's no one, at least there's no one you have access to tonight who deserves it.
If you had a month, maybe.
Yeah. But luckily she has an out, because she's told by the mystic that actually she can go and return the curse to the corpse of the woman who gave it to her. So
because Romani people sometimes place blessings on their dead, which is an interesting loophole.
Sure.
I love the how in the first of all, the smash cut to the grave digging is great. Very Sam Raimi. It was like the spooky music, and she, thunderclaps, and she's like already like deep in the ditch, but it's also like it's just her working with the shovel, right? But it's like a perfectly dug out rectangle around the coffin,
and it's more than 6 feet deep. Like it's like 12. It's so the whole the establishing shot of the cemetery too is so like, I hate to keep using the word cartoonish, but I don't know what else to use. It's like almost kind of like late period Tim Burton-y as well. There's like lots of like hills and weird looking tombstones. Like it's got personality, and that's something that's so often lacking in this kind of a like middle budget horror movie. God bless.
Yeah. But yeah, she jams this envelope with the button in it that's cursed into the dead woman's hand. The grave completely fills up, just completely floods, jams it into the woman's mouth. You think she's drowned, and then she gets out.
So somehow loses even more of her hair.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like the
corpse.
The corpse.
Yeah, the corpse still has personality.
Hair
The corpse still has a little energy left in it. Yeah. What does she say? She's like, "That's the last of my hair that you're gonna get," or something like that.
So good. Such a great line.
I'd be surprised if she didn't say bitch.
But yeah, then everything's good. Perfect day.
Perfect day. She gets that promotion.
Gets a new coat.
Gets a new coat. She's gonna leave with her boyfriend to go to his parents' cabin on the ocean, and he's brought the ring. He's gonna ask the big question, and it's all going well. And the train's coming up to the platform. And then he's like, "Oh, by the way, why'd you get a new coat? Because I have the button for your old one." Oh my God, because she thought she took the button in the envelope, but she actually took the collectible coin that she put in an envelope and gave to her boyfriend at the beginning of the movie. And then all their papers got mixed up when they had to brake suddenly in the car, and she picked up the wrong envelope. And so she gave the coin to the woman in the grave, and then the boyfriend still has the button. Holy fuck.
Your verbal reenactment of that scene is maybe more terrifying than how it plays out in the movie.
And so she recoils in horror and falls on the train tracks, and you think she's about to get run over by this train, but no, even worse, she gets dragged to hell. The end.
The fucking fiery pit opens up right under the train tracks, drags her down. Her face turns into some awesome ass, like Raiders of the Lost Ark looking skull face the last moment you see her. It's phenomenal.
But it doesn't cut to black on that. They say, wait a minute, let's go back to Justin Long. And the last shot is Justin Long, horrified and crying, staring into the gravel, because Sam Raimi knows, like I know, that Justin Long is a good actor.
I was going to say cut back to Justin Long because there's no greater horror than that.
I love that this is truth in advertising. She got dragged to hell.
Yeah.
It's exactly what we were told was going to happen, and she couldn't do anything to reverse it. The movie flattened in on itself, and I think it's pretty brilliant. I think the fact that it's so nasty, it's such a cruel way to dispose of this character who probably didn't deserve it. That's why it sticks with us. That's why it's such a great little gut punch that gets people talking, and I think has kept this movie from fading into obscurity. Not that it would have anyway, but it's just it's the secret spice is this ending.
It's a movie that I often forget exists. And then, like, every 5 years, which I guess can't have been that many times since it came out in 2009, but I'm like, oh, yeah, Sam Raimi, like, made a fun movie that one time after Spider-Man. And then I watch it, and that ending is really the sticking point, though. You know, it just pops up in my mind every now and again. Like, I can't believe that a major mainstream movie was able to get away with that, to call itself Drag Me to Hell and have its mostly likable protagonist actually dragged to hell in the end.
It's like Kill Bill. You know, I said the blood was like Kill Bill.
Yeah.
Kill Bill tells you what you're going to get. And then just like this movie, there's that part where you're like, wait a minute, maybe she's not going to kill Bill. What's the name of the movie? Of course she's going to kill Bill.
Oh, it's fun. You know, I was thinking about this, about the way the movie ends, and like this question of like, did she deserve it or not? And I think what I like about it so much is that the movie makes clear that it just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like if we lived in a universe where hell was just like something that vindictive people could like curse onto other people, then everybody would be being sent to hell for like personal slights, right? Like there's no, it's like a form of currency, and it's not something like deserves got nothing to do with it. You know, she She just found that lady on a bad day and gave her the worst news of her life.
Yeah, she just stepped in it, and there's no going back. There's no way of correcting it. At least not within 3 days with as few resources as she has. And yeah, and yet it's still somehow surprising in the end to me that she's done for. It like in a way that it like made me the first time I saw this movie. Like I think I probably cheered, like not at like her demise, but just at the audacity of Sam Raimi.
Patrick, do you remember the reaction in the theater at the ending?
I don't. No, I have very little memory of anything other than my own reaction to a few big moments, including this ending, which I did love. But yeah, I don't remember others' reactions to it.
And I'm pretty sure we had to have seen this together in the
probably. Yeah, I feel like I definitely saw it in Monroe. Yeah.
All right, well that's your movie, guys. Any stray thoughts? Anything else you want to say about Drag Me to Hell?
Has anybody seen this movie from the 50s that apparently inspired this movie called Night of the Demon?
No. I've heard of it though.
I don't know anything about it, but
it came
I
up.
just read that he was inspired by it.
I'll share this on the Discord, but that movie, I only know about that movie because there's a website called catsonfilm.net, and Cat of the Day number 89 on January 17th, 2013 was that poor little kitty from this movie, and the writer is drawing some parallels to that movie, which I guess was based on an M.R. James story called Casting the Runes.
That kitty was so cute.
So I'm going to have to check both of those out. That was a cute kitty.
Oh, yeah, we forgot to mention that it got puked up by a possessed person during the seance. I guess that was a spoiler. That should have been in your drive-in totals. One dead cat puked out of somebody's mouth.
Too many drive-in totals to remember for this movie.
Yeah.
Well, let's put a fork in it. What are we watching next week? I believe.
We go to the wheel.
We're back on the wheel because we're back on the normal format. Okay.
We're back on Netflix and we are going to the Wheel of Death. So let's bring out our cyber wheel. We have every horror movie on Netflix loaded into this son of a bitch, and we are gonna give it the old spin to figure out what we're watching. All right. Oh, it's spinning. It's spinning. We are going to watch Zom 100, Bucket List of the Dead.
I remember hearing about that when it came out, but I forget what the like gimmick is.
An N film.
From 2023? Oh, well.
Yeah. Bullied by his boss, worked around the clock. He's nothing more than a corporate drone. Sounds familiar? All it takes is a zombie outbreak for him to finally feel alive.
Oh, right. It's a manga adaptation. That's why I know about it. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, all right.
Track record with those isn't great, so we'll see.
Well, we'll see.
Could this be a Gantz O situation?
Or a hashtag alive situation about the last N zombie film we watched, I think.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, Andrew, it's been wonderful to finally have you on the show. This has been a blast. You boys as well. Fun to talk about what I think is becoming one of my favorite standalone horror movies that's unrelated to a franchise, Drag Me to Hell. But we will be watching... Oh, I closed the window. Zom 100. What was the rest of
Bucket List of the Dead.
We'll be watching Zom 100, Bucket List of the Dead in 2 weeks. Selfishly, I want you to go to my book club on the Discord. Check out Steven's book club. We'll be reading a collection of horror short stories soon. Anything else anybody wants to plug before we pull the plug on this episode?
Andrew, plug Radioactive one more time.
Sure. I'll plug my podcast, Radioactive, The Father Coughlin Story, an 8-part immersive historical epic that delves into the life and times of an infamous 1930s radio preacher from Detroit who was America's leading voice in favor of fascism and anti-Semitism in the years leading up to World War II. So if you are a history buff, check it out.
I know I will be. Well, for every horror movie on Netflix, I've been Steven.
I've been Chris.
I'm Patrick.
Thanks again, Andrew. You're welcome back anytime. We'd love to have you.
Can't think of 3 guys I'd rather be dragged to hell with.
All right. Creep it real.